Millions of children and teenagers in Australia are expected to lose access to social media as the country introduces a world-first law banning usage for under-16s. Joining us for some insight, we speak to digital law expert Rorke Wilson from the Digital Law Company. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time, Rorke. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has called it a proud day for families and cast the law as proof that policymakers can indeed curb online harms. We understand it's been a ban in the making for a year now. What do you make of the decision?
Firstly, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I think the decision is exciting. I think it's great that we've got a fairly big and powerful government making moves to try and regulate these global tech companies better. However, I'm not sure if this is the best approach, and I think it risks carrying a lot more harms than potential benefits.
You call it exciting, but we know that throughout the process, supporters in Australia have argued it's for the well-being of children who they say spend way too much time online and risk being exposed to uncontrollable pressures, bullying, predators and so forth. On the other hand, opponents say restricting children's access to the internet runs the risk of pushing them to even less regulated corners of it. And they question the effectiveness of the age verification technology the ban relies on. Is there empirical evidence that outright bans, as opposed to well-designed harm reduction measures for one, do really reduce bullying, body image harm or misinformation exposure?
The empirical evidence mostly says mixed things right now. There's a lot of evidence that does suggest that cutting back teens' time on social media, on the internet, can improve their mental health outcomes, can improve cyberbullying. However, we don't have that direct causal link between time on the internet and harms coming to teens on social media. And if we, think about the legal age for drinking, having that at 18 doesn't stop underage kids from drinking either. So I don't think the ban itself is going to achieve what we want. And I agree with the aims of the ban. I do think that we do have a problem with kids spending too much time online, with not enough third spaces encouraging and having them out in the real world, developing those internal personal connections between each other. However, I think it's very, very dangerous to just outright ban it, because as you said, we risk pushing kids to darker corners of the internet. And as it stands right now, this law only covers 10 of the major platforms. Kids are resourceful, so they're either going to go and get their older teenager to use their face to log in. There have been some people have shown you can use an old man Halloween mask to get past the age verification, or just show a picture of your parents. On top of that, there's also a very useful thing in the internet for teens. Myself, as a queer kid who went to an all-boys boarding school in a very small town, the internet was a safe haven for me. It put me in the face of a lot of danger, but in many ways it allowed me to develop and become the person I am today, because there was a lot more space and a lot more room to explore my identity. And I think that banning the internet or social media outright to under 16s really risks further marginalizing already marginalized kids.
Yeah, speaking about that, as we try and assess the potential success of the ban and how it will eventually be measured and over what time frame, is there a chance at all that the law could inadvertently deprive young people of essential digital literacy development during their formative years? I mean, given what you've mentioned, I also ask you this because the Australian government said that just before this ban took effect, 86% of Australians aged 8 to 15 use social media. That's a significant number.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big divides, particularly between the richest and the poorest, that we're going to see in the coming years is this widening in digital literacy. And I think a ban like this only removes opportunities for the younger kids, for those kids who maybe don't have the same resources as the richer kids, to develop their time and develop themselves online. It's quite dangerous, I think, to just drop them in at 16 without any previous experience on the internet. I don't think anyone younger than 13 should be on social media. We've got so much evidence that it really only harms them. But from 13 to 16 onwards, there should be parental discretion, there should be guidance. And I think the solution to this is not banning kids outright, but I think putting better responsibility on the platforms, making it so that they have to publish what their algorithms are, how they target us, how they push content, so we can understand how the how this content is interacting with us, rather than just removing kids entirely from the space.
You speak about being marginalized when it comes to the social isolation risk factors. What alternative support systems do you think exist for teenagers who rely on social media for community, identity exploration, or even mental health peer support?
There's very little. There is maybe within the school someone that the child has access to who can speak to. Maybe if they're lucky enough to have parents they can speak to about these things, but this doesn't affect those kids. This affects the kids that don't have anyone to speak to, who are stuck in poor circumstances where, unfortunately, a lot of the time they are looking out for themselves. And I see very few alternatives to the openness that the internet gives in many ways. And as much as I really agree with the fact that we need to protect kids better online, I don't think censoring the internet from them, I don't think removing them from it is the answer to this.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us and helping us unpack this. Rorke Wilson from the digital law company, talking about how millions of children and teenagers in Australia are expected to lose access to social media with the country introducing a ban.